Your early morning mentality is your every hour mentality. All gas, no brakes. Focus, purpose, power. Destined for the water, but confident everywhere else. A calming buzz before the storm, the truth of nature itself. You can't catch lightning in a bottle. There's a limit out there, but it's not with your gear. Unrelenting power delivery. Unparalleled weight savings. Keeping you on the water, whether you run a 9.9 or outscoping your best 5. In this rare air, there's power in the silence. It's a mindset, thinking only of the things that matter and freeing your mind from the things that you trust.
Things you let me see. Things you let me see.
Cutting down the chaos of life is a lot easier when you can find everything you need, including peace, at one place. Your local farm and home supply.
Hey everybody, Monday night, 7 o'clock Central, and we are in for another good podcast. We've got angler Kirk Luckey on tonight. Going to talk about Perryville, Missouri, our upcoming tournament that's going to be July 6th. Talk about some bumping techniques that we're going to maybe hopefully get some ideas and stuff from him on big fish he's been catching over the last few years bumping. He is from that area also. And then just talk about catfishing. So anything you got any questions, ask in the comments. And let's get tonight's show started. What's going on?
What's up, buddy? How are you?
Good, man. It's been a crazy couple of weeks for me. Last podcast I had, actually the next day I flew to New York for a conference and then went to Arizona after that for a family vacation and then got back and then just did the Sea Arc Owners poker run. And then got back yesterday afternoon. So tonight will be my second night home in about 4 weeks. So
Yeah.
It's been wild.
Crazy. It's nice to get home though after all that.
Yeah, no, it's good to be home and had to do some mowing and a little bit of stuff to kind of get back and everything going. But yeah, so now it's kind of June's always kind of that month where it's kind of the spawn in our area is pretty going pretty good. Obviously that's always been a big discussion. Spawns in June. Within working with biologists and stuff. We always hear, and especially with some of you guys down further south. We've seen late July and August even have spawned out fish, even as early as May, and even in October we've seen some spawn fish. So fish, I think, spawn throughout the year. Obviously, I think June is one of the most prevalent ones. But what's your thoughts on that? Because you've been doing some fishing lately.
Yeah, and it's been real spotty. I mean, you go and I caught a really nice one just the other day, like a 40, and it was clean. Like it was chubby, it was healthy. It had not been doing anything. So I don't know, but it's this high water spawn. The bumping's been kind of feast or famine a little bit. So
yeah, I know. So like up here, I'm in pool 20. You're all the way down there in Perryville. So I think we're going to see some of the Missouri River that's going to be pushed down there, the Mississippi and the Illinois. So I think a lot of that water is going to end up down there. I think it'll be kind of interesting. Actually, I'll try to see if I can't pull up the graph on here. But do you know what the level is right now?
I want to say it's like around 20 at Chester, something like that. Maybe a touch lower.
Yeah, so right now it looks like it is. Let me see if I can pull this up on the screen. All right, so it looks like right now we're at 21.65. And it's going to go down a little bit to 20 and then jump up. So it looks like June 30th to July 6th.
Yeah.
So look at that, 28.8 July 6th is what they're talking about. So that's an 8-foot rise from, 7 foot from today.
Yeah.
So what would 7 more feet do? What's the highest you've been on that body of water?
Quite a bit higher than that. I mean, that's up there, for how I'm wanting to, like, I don't know. It's the time of year where I want to be bumping, so that's what I want to do. I'm not trying to go up in the shallows somewhere and tuck up against the bank or anything. I don't know. I just rather catch them how I want to catch them, and that's bumping right now. But it's just, that's you're dealing with a lot of current and a lot of stuff a lot of trash in the water. So it'll be doable.
Yeah, that looks like minor flooding if you look at the gauge here. It looks like moderates 35 foot, majors 40 foot.
Yeah.
So it's really not going to be nothing crazy. I think we've been so used to the low water over the last few years, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. It's been like crazy low for really since I got into it. I mean, there was one time last spring where it jumped up a touch, but really it's been low and a lot easier to target fish. And so yeah, this higher water. I was out bumping the end of May, like right at the beginning of June, and it was way higher than what it's going to be, and we caught fish. I mean,
I was going to say, if you look here on the graph, it says May 3rd of 24. It was 31 feet.
Yeah, it was. Well, put it this way: we put in at the Chester ramp, and the boat did not start going down the ramp before it got off the trailer. So it was. I mean, and anybody that has put in at Chester knows how long that ramp is, and how steep it is. So that's how high it was when we launched and fished. Beginning of the month or sometime in May.
Yeah, I like either to be really low water. I mean, low is my favorite, or high, especially on a rise. I mean, if you look at the graph here, I mean, for me as a tournament angler, I'm getting really excited because you got it pretty steady, but it's going to start that rise. You're going to see that rise 5-6 days before the tournament, and it's going to. Now, the only thing I wouldn't want to see is it July 5th, it start going down hard. I hate that, but that's some of my favorite right there. That graph stays somewhat like that.
Yep. It's gonna.
So in your eyes, what does that do to the fish? What's your thoughts with this graph, this forecast, it being pretty steady, and then jumping up 7-8 feet, in a week and a half? You think that's going to force those fish kind of in some banks?
I'm going to be, normally I'm trying to be on the swift side of the river. But you almost just can't do it when it's like that. So I don't know. I've been doing the best on the slower side. If there's any amount of water depth on the slow side, that's where I've kind of been targeting and finding them. You get boat control gets difficult. in that much current. The trash, that's another thing. Wherever the trash is floating, whatever, I try to, stay out of that and be back there at the back of the boat bumping, and all of a sudden you trolling motors grinding away at a tree or something. And just how much weight do you want to pull or, use? Because I've been up in the 12, 16, 20 ounce range pretty well every trip so far, and your arm gets tired.
So when you're using like a 12, 16, or 20 ounce, how far back is your bait? Like how much are you slowing down? Let's say that the current, I mean, what is your preferred speed when you're using that big a weight?
It's really, I try not to run my trolling motor any higher than 9. 8.5 is where I really want to be. So I just kind of, wherever that gets me. I've been bumping a lot at like 2 miles an hour just because, the current's 5.5, 6. So, but it's been working. I guess I look at it like if it's, if you have a slow current at 3 and you slow yourself down to 1.5, well, it's the same as if it's 5 and you slow yourself down to 2 or 2.5. I don't know. It makes sense in my mind, I guess. I want to be going pretty slow. Typically when you got lower water and you can get away with it, I'm wanting to be like below 1 and get that and get my bait out there. But it just is what it is. It's got to go with the conditions.
Do you ever mark fish and say that, hey, I need a spot lock or anchor on this spot, and I know these fish are in this section, maybe there's some structure, and ever walk bait to those fish, or do you just like to stay moving?
No, I very rarely ever do that. Maybe that's wrong. I don't know, but I just don't. I don't mark a ton of fish when the way I go about it. Like around here, I know it well enough to know what banks, what they look like, where the structure is, where the holes are, stuff like that. So I don't necessarily need to mark a bunch of fish. I'm looking at the structure side of it going, okay, we've got it, we got a real roller coaster bottom through here or whatever it may be or something like that. But as far as like scanning and looking for fish, it's just, I don't do that a ton on bumping. I use the covering the water to find the fish, I guess.
So what would you tell an angler that's coming from Kansas or Nebraska that's not really familiar with that area and even bumping that kind of current? What would you tell them? What would be a little piece of advice?
Man, I'm no pro at it myself. Maybe they have something for me. No, I don't know. I really don't know what to say. There's little things. Use your charts, and if you're seeing a bunch of unevenness, that's probably a great place to start. I tend to not do very well when it's flat. I know some guys are like, oh, they were on the sand, and sand is a lot of times is pretty smooth and everything like that. But those 2 to 3 foot depth fluctuations is where I really do the best. Or if you can find a bank that's holding, got some trees or got some wood or got some big rock. There's some areas around here that they've sunk some gigantic rock to keep from the river cutting the banks and stuff like that. And it's tricky, but if you can get a bait down through there, it's usually pretty good. But you almost just can't fish the areas like that with this much current, or at least I can't. It's just tough. Stuff's moving too fast, and there's a bunch of whirly birds there throwing the boat all over the place. It's just tough to do.
Yeah, that's what's tough is when you have that, that weird current where it slows the boat. You're on a rhythm, and you got, you're at a mile an hour, and then your bait, slows way down, or the boat starts to kind of turn or slow down. But that is usually the sweet spot. So if you can kind of get in there and You know, I know a lot of people have even started anchoring up on some stuff like that just to try to get their bait where they want it, which can be really tough.
Yeah.
You know,
That particular spot I'm talking about was some of the biggest marks I've ever had were right in there. I mean, it's wicked current. Even when the river's low, that it's so swift right in there in them hard bends. But yeah, but when it's real high, because then it's making the river 50, 60, 70 feet deep there too. So it's just a lot. It's a lot going on. But if you could spot like that and get a bait in there, you'd probably go all right. Do what?
What's some of the deepest water you see like in that area? Does it get pretty deep?
Yeah, well, when the river's up like this, I mean, it's easy to find 50, 60, 70 feet. I mean, I'd say with the river being lower like it has been, I mean, you're topping out. A lot of your deeper stretches are 40. There's a couple places where it's up to 60 even when the water's low, but I mean, again, if I'm being honest, when the river's where it's supposed to be or when it's low, I do really well in the 20 to 25 foot. You know, I don't necessarily target the super deeper water. I find the swifter water when it's low. But when it's like this, it seems that I think they get out of that really, really swift stuff and move over to the little bit calmer side or whatever.
Yeah, that's some good info. What, you know, the new bait regulations in Alabama, what's your thoughts there? How is that going to change how you get bait? Are you going to be getting bait locally?
Yeah, I have a local bait shop. It's a grocery store.
We did there. When I got to go with you, we did go to that to get some chicken. So is that going to be primary bait? Or are you going to have some skipjack or shad or?
I seem to always take it and never use it. It's great. I take my nice frozen skipjack and let it thaw in the cooler and don't use it and then end up wasting it. I don't know. Bumpin for sure. My go-to is the chicken. But we'll see.
It'll be what's your partner going to use? Chicken?
He's pretty much on the chicken train too. He's watched it work enough, but I don't know. It'll probably make sense to do like Nate and I used to do and try different things. But I mean, if they start hitting one thing more than the other, then I always think it's better to go for broke. Like put whatever bait's getting hit, put that on. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But you know what I mean? There's a reason why they're hitting one thing more than the other.
Yeah. So you'd be at Roger's then. That's what.
That's exactly right.
Old Crow's asking plain garlic, strawberry, cherry, or just.
I buy it at the store and cut it up, pull it straight out of the package and cut it up on the cutting board. I don't do nothing to it.
And you said, is frozen have a little bit of different? Is it frozen or fresh, or does that matter when you buy it from the store?
I don't think that part matters. I mean, there's always fresh there, so that's what I grab. But I've used frozen in a pinch. I was driving to a different section of river and needed to grab some and stopped along the way, and this place didn't have any fresh and they had frozen, and I just set it in the boat, let it thaw on the rest of the drive and caught fish on it too. So I don't think that matters as much as like your fish baits. There's shad and skipjack and stuff like that. I don't think the frozen aspect.
Skipjack oil, you know what I mean? I know like Grizzly Jig had like big jugs of skipjack oil. Yeah. But I wonder if more and more people, because it's cheap, it's extremely easy to get chicken. Yeah. You know, some people are going to drive to the Tennessee River or Kentucky Lake or wherever they get their skipjack and try to go catch some fresh. And that is going to be costly. It's going to cost you a lot of time, a lot of fuel, and take away from your pre-fishing. So, I mean, those are three major things that you got to think about. I know we've been joking about chicken, especially with you, for the last year or two. But I mean, it's been a big kind of like, does it work? Does it not work for years in catfishing? I mean, you always hear that, you know, somebody caught it on grape chicken or whatever, but I used chicken when I went down to Natchitoches and was catching fish. So I know it works. I've seen what you caught, and it'll be interesting to see with some of these regulations, people going to that. You know what I mean? Because if you wax a bunch of people in Perryville on chicken, I mean, that's going to make a statement.
Yeah.
Doug Evans asked, bone in or bone out?
Just like I've actually used both. I used thighs with the bone in, just hooked the whole dang thing on there and sunk it. None of it really seemed to matter, honestly. I typically go for just a straight chicken breast with nothing in it, you know, Tyson brand or whatever it may be. But yeah, pretty simple.
That's cheap. I mean, you're talking for probably what, $14. You got plenty of bait all day.
Yeah, like the family size thing is, you know, 6 big chicken breasts, and like you said, $15 I mean, I can't drive to Kentucky Dam for anywhere close to that, you know, in hopes that the skipjack are better.
Catch them.
Yeah, that's just it. And I mean, it started out as kind of a joke, and it started out because I didn't know any better, and I was new, and I couldn't throw a cast net, and that's the whole reason why I bought some my very first time, was just out of necessity. Like, if I fail to find other bait, I want to have something in the boat. And then I smoked them that day, and it just kind of become the thing. And like, I'm not kidding when I say I have full on confidence. Like, if I'm bumping, more than 99% of the time I'm using chicken. It's just what I have the most confidence in. And I understand totally if somebody doesn't, you know, thinks it's silly, or it's like, that's too simple. Like, that's, you know, it's such an obvious thing. There's no way that can work, but I mean, it just does.
And what's some of the recent fish you've caught on chicken? What's some of your biggest?
2 of my top 3 biggest have come on it, which was 94 and 77.
And those are big fish.
Pretty good size.
I'm trying to show people a picture because I know that you got to see that in person. I mean, and those were bumping, the 94.
The 94, the biggest one, was bumping, yeah, on chicken. The 77 come this past winter, early spring, on anchor.
So let me see. All right, so that right there.
Yep.
I mean, not many people have caught a fish that size, and especially on. And it'd be one thing if it was like that's the only fish you ever caught on chicken, and you know what I mean. But like I said, being just like Doug said, confidence is key. Being confident in your gear, your spot, being positive. I mean, makes all the difference. That's a toad.
Yeah, that's really what it is for me. If I get off the river and I did not catch fish, I never go, man, I don't think I had the right bait. And that for me is a huge thing. I don't ever question, like, well, it probably wasn't, you know, it probably wasn't the bait, or it was probably the bait. They just weren't biting on that today, because I've never experienced that. I've never had somebody else in the boat fishing with some other bait that has outfished me. I mean, we've bumped over 30 many times using it. So
So let me ask you this another thing about bumping. Do you think that it matters if there's two of you bumping, does it matter who's furthest back that's going to catch the fish more? Or does some people have a better technique to catch more fish?
I don't know. I've not fished with a ton of people, so I'm sure that the being the further back has something to do with it. Just, you're the first bait in the target area or whatever, but I don't really know. I'd imagine the guy that keeps it more of a rhythm, I think, rather than being all herky jerky. And that to me, like I'm trying to be as, soon as it touches, come back up to where it kind of stays in that nice straight line rather than you're way up and way back down. And, try not to drag your weight ever. Just keep it to where it's just ticking that bottom. Just on a guide trip I went on one time, Captain Tyler was like, you don't want your weight to just barely just touch, it's nice and easy just down through there. And that just always kind of stuck with me. So that's kind of how I do it. Short, little, boop, boop, boop. So.
Doug saying skin or skinless?
The skin is nice because it actually has more holding power. A lot of times what I'll do is, if I'm not going fishing that day, is I'll take it and I'll take the wrapping off of it and just let it sit in the fridge. And then it kind of like hardens up on that side to where it gives the hook a little something more to go through. And it's not quite so soft that way. Because it's not a tough bait by any means. You got to kind of, and I always walk that line like I'm gonna hook it as little as possible because I want that hook exposed as much as I can. So you're gonna get hit sometimes and you'll lose it sometimes, but it's all about how you slice it too. Like you can slice it in a way where you're against the grain and it holds the hook better versus going with, and it'll pull right out.
So another question I had actually today when I said that I was going to have you on, this person was asking about leader length, and to ask you, like, do you think that matters? If it's a short leader, long leader, kind of go into detail on maybe like how you do your rig and why, and why you think, or do you do different? I know some people that tie the same rig like exactly 10 inches every time. And some people do, a 3 foot leader and a foot leader and kind of see what bites. What's your kind of thoughts on that?
Yeah, I tend to go with a longer leader. And there's no really rhyme or reason, I guess. It's just how I started to build them. And I've used all different sizes, in a pinch, or you bust one off and you just throw one back together real quick. I've always been really adamant. Like I want to have a rattle of some sort. I feel if I'm not, that's one thing. If I'm not catching fish and I don't have a rattle on, I will cut that off and switch immediately. Cause I'm like, it's the rattle. I know it's the rattle. I have to get it back on there. But I broke off one day and just tied on a hook. Didn't mess with, a pre-tied rig or nothing. Just put a hook on. Just one of those days you're out fun fishing, experimenting by yourself. And I caught quite a few fish with just a hook, not with a swivel, there was no spinner, no nothing. So I don't know how much difference any of that makes, but for me, I like that longer leader just to get away from that weight, just a touch. I don't know. I feel like that and your dropper length on your weight, to me, is a way for just the way that I go about it. It keeps me from getting snagged as much. So
how are you? I know some people are using, every rig is different. Are you snelling a lot of that stuff? Are you tying or?
Yeah. So typically, well, if I'm at the house building them, I'm crimping. I'll crimp everything. I
That's
snell
what
the
I meant,
hook.
Yeah,
Yeah,
crimping.
yeah. I snell all the hooks, but I crimp everything else if I'm at the house building them. I use like the 3-way bumping swivels, the ones that are in line or whatever. I like those. The crane swivels are fine too. I use those as well, but I like those bumping swivels a lot. And then I usually put down to I use a chain swivel, and I usually put the chain swivel pretty close to my hook. Not, not touching or anything, but fairly close to the hook. That way it puts the rattle closest to my bait. So I'll have a really long section leader down to the chain swivel and then a short section of leader to my hook, if that makes any sense. I don't know, if there's so much going on down there, and I know that they can sense that bait and everything like that, but I feel like if you have, I like that vibration and everything. You want to shut those dogs up? Thanks, bud. I feel like if you have that vibration and that rattle closer to the bait, it just helps them find it. Because I feel like sometimes when you get hit, if you're using like a demon dragon, I would assume sometimes when you're getting hit, they're hitting that rattle. They can feel that in the water or whatever too, and so that's why I like to put it as close to my hook as I can. But I also don't want them to then inhale. A big fish will inhale the whole thing, and I don't want that to cost me. So it's, in my mind, I want to be close, but not too close, I guess.
So you're using more of a demon dragon than a float?
No, so I either use just like those on the line rattles.
Yeah.
Just those little cheap spinner things, or these little ones that they look like a torpedo. They sit there and go nuts. If I use one of those, I'm not using a float, but it's either that or a demon dragon, which is obviously a float and a rattle. So, but no, if I'm just using a regular old spinning rattle, I don't use a float.
That makes sense. Huh. So do you run dead sticks? That was another question I had. I just got a little list here of people that have messaged me. So a lot of people say, is it worth trying the dead stick when you're bumping, or what do guys do? What's your thoughts?
So in my opinion, maybe it's because of what I'm trying to fish. The dead sticks cost me so much time. And I don't feel like I'm focused on my bumping as much as I want to be. I guess like not doing I'm pretty particular about it. Like I want to be doing, I'm not just swinging a stick around and hoping for the best. Like I kind of want to do it a certain way. And the dead sticks for me, constantly having to reel up, reel down, get snagged, whatever it may be, the current picks up, so they're way out the back of the boat, or the current slows down and they're tucked up underneath. And I don't know that I've ever caught a fish dead sticking while bumping. I don't think I've ever done it. Now, if I just put out, if I'm just wanting to drift and put out 6 rods or whatever, I've caught fish that way. But I don't think I've ever been actively bumping plus have dead sticks out and ever caught a fish on those. I mean, they're behind the baits. I feel like, you've already bumped all that water, and chances of your bait on that dead stick being down towards the bottom anyway. And I know they could be in the channel, they could be anywhere, or in the water column anywhere. But yeah, for me, I don't. You get one snagged up, that becomes a job trying to get it, or just snap it off, break the rig off or whatever. But I try not to do that, because if you're dead sticking, you're using a big, 16, 20 ounce weight or more, and that gets pretty costly after a while.
Yeah, I remember the very first MRM, like 8 years ago. I tried dead sticking while we were bumping. So we got our first 2 dead sticks out, and just in the first 5 minutes, like we were in some nasty structure, got hung up, and just almost formed to the side of the boat, broke the rod. Like there's a lot of stuff going on. I think there is some scenarios where, maybe you're on a sandbar or something like that you don't have a ton of structure where you can kind of drag bottom or mess with it. But like Sean said, to focus on bumping, dead sticks will cost you. And it can, it forces you to do too many things. You know what I mean? You can't barely even take a drink or do anything or be on your phone when you're bumping because you just want to be like focused on that. So now I think having a third person in the boat, that's something that third person could do. Because sometimes bumping 3 is tough. Yeah.
That's the thing. If you did that, absolutely. Because then obviously you're getting more hooks in the water too. And I guess you could dead stick at like shallower depths. Look at guys that go jugging. I mean, they're catching fish at 4, 6, 10. I've got a set of jugs. I jug one time a year at this little local benefit tournament or whatever. And I think my jugs, I've got 10 feet of line with a hook at like 5 and a hook at 10. And we catch fish on them. So I guess you could dead stick like that, but I don't know why, but it just feels wrong. It feels weird. Like, this is a waste of time. I'm not going to catch nothing like this. So I'm always wanting to be right at the bottom. And that's where you can snag. And like you said, you think you're moving slow when you're doing 1.5 miles an hour. But if you get hung up, that rod is real quick going to be bent hard. And if you don't have your drag quite set, and it can become.
What is some of the bigger fish you've caught in that jugging tournament?
In that tournament, I've never really caught anything giant. I think like a 40, 42 maybe, something like that. I've never caught like a real big fish jugging. I would totally lose the tournament though anyway if I did, because I wouldn't keep it. I'd put it back because it's a tournament where they eat them all. Everybody brings in and they clean them, and then that's the meal for everybody that was in the tournament or whatever. So I would take a picture of it and put it back and lose regardless. But I don't know. We caught a 90. We caught a 96, I think 95 on a jug one time. That was not during the tournament, but just went back in our younger days when we used to jug a lot more.
That's a giant. So, if you think of that technique, and I know a few guys, including myself, that all use planer boards, so when I am bumping, something I know I can do is my dead stick is a planer board 20 yards out, 10 feet down or 15 feet down, depending on my depth. And if I'm marking any kind of fish, you know what I mean? I've caught fish in that mid-level, not giants, 20s, 30s, but still that might be a 30 that you need. And that's just that one more piece of bait that's out there that you don't have to worry about because the planer board is away from the boat. It's kind of away from the noise you're making. And again, it's just creating more scent, and it's in the middle of that water column. So I try to always have some bait in the water column, on those planer boards away from the boat as I'm back bouncing. You never know. That could be the fish. No, you need.
Yeah. That 90 whatever on that jug, it come out of like 8 feet of water at the head of a sandbar. Like the jug got away, and we'll come back and we were picking up all the other ones. Like, we'll get that one. Who would have thought that fish was just chilling, the dead of summer in 7 feet of water? So who knows? It's not a bad thing. I just usually don't want the headache of the extra rods.
It's a lot of work. It really is.
Yeah. If we're driving the boat, go ahead.
Do you ever have a third person in the boat, or?
We have a couple of times. Yeah. New Madrid last year we had 3. We bumped 3, and I think we probably got lines tangled a time or two, but it wasn't too bad. I think if you got some guys that are pretty decent at it, you're able to keep your stuff pretty separate, or just somebody use a lighter weight and get the guy in the middle get back behind everybody, or vice versa, or the guys on the sides go back and the guy in the middle use a heavier. You can stagger it out pretty good.
Kevin says, guy at home catches big fish all the time, jugging with straight hot dogs for bait. And like I said, I think that, again, bait's bait. Obviously, I think that you think that they're native fish that they're going to eat. You know what I mean? But they, those blue cats will eat anything, I think. I mean,
one of my favorite jugging baits, like my go-to, is those smoked sausages, them big ones that are coming like the 2-pack. I just cut those up. And I half them and then cut them into sections and then run the hook through it and then back out. And that's what I've used. I mean, since I was a kid, and the guys, the older guys that took me along, that's what they used. And I'm like, well, it worked great, so.
B Hider said dead sticks off the bottom, caught a bunch of fish suspended. Yeah. And like I said, it's, and that brings me back, the bump and the anchor and all that, the different techniques that we have. Did you watch the Ryan Casey podcast?
Yes.
The deeper we got, the more info he was saying. But, something that he brought up, because he is an OG, he's been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
He talked about how the fish have gotten smarter and, they know like some of these techniques and they've changed. So, like he said, that it's not as easy catching fish bumping like as it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And some of the techniques like, dead sticking. And he kind of acted like he was kind of getting back more into the dead sticking and doing well. So do you think those fish kind of change and adapt to how we fish for them?
I mean, I've not been in it anywhere near long enough to know any different, than basically what is working for me right now is all I really know. And that might transition as years go by or whatever. But I mean, it seems like every other animal is capable of that. If you just drive by a field full of deer all day, they'll stand there. But if you stop and roll the window down, they'll all run away. But if you go to a place where there's no cars and do that, then they'll just stand there and look at you, or, a place where that's more remote or whatever. So I can see it. I mean, I can see that the fish that are these heavily fished areas that are getting hit all the time, can probably like, okay, that's not real. That's why it's so crucial to like do a good job of presenting everything, I think.
Oh yeah, 100%. Tim is asking what type of sinkers you're using. So, there are some anglers up here that are going to go south and have not fished that big water. Yeah. So are you using cannonballs, or are you using, like, what is your go-to sinker and why?
So cannonballs for sure. But I don't have giant ones. I think I only have 8 or 10 ounces, the biggest I have for that. But yeah, I would way prefer a cannonball just for the surface area. I just think that you can feel it better. But when I'm having to use 12, 16, 20 ounce, I just have the regular old bank sinkers. At that point, it's so much weight, I don't think it matters anymore. Like, you're gonna feel it. I think in the lightweights is where you can tell a big difference between like a bank sinker, a 3-ounce bank sinker versus a cannonball. I think you can definitely tell a difference. But yeah, those heavyweights, it's just so much weight. Like, it's gonna touch bottom, and you're gonna feel it regardless. So
yeah, I mean, I've got my cannonballs are from I got like 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5, 6, 8s, 10s.
Yeah.
10, I think. No, I got maybe some 12s, but I mean, 12s are big. I mean, you got to really be fired up to throw some 12s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that's especially, if you're going to do it a lot. I mean, that's just a lot of weight to constantly.
Yeah. You don't think about it. I mean, you think it's, less than a pound, but you do that all day. If you fish the whole tournament bumping, when you get done, I mean, you're gonna be whooped.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna feel it, especially if you're in deeper water. and you get all that drag too. I mean, that was another question online. Somebody had asked about braid or mono. What's your thoughts on, most people are using braid. You're using braid bumping, and do different braids have different, like, is some higher quality braid not have as much resistance in the water? Like, what's your thoughts on?
I like the round stuff, like the higher strand count. That for me, smoother on your thumb is the biggest thing for me. That's what I like about it. I don't know how it would be if you got the lower strand, like 4-strand, if that would actually cut the water because it's more flat, or if it would get sideways and catch more water. I don't really know. And I thought about that too. Like, what if you downed your braid size, if that would make a difference on the drag in the water in like the high water conditions where there's a lot of current. Like, if you, instead of using 80, if you would back down to like 50, if that would, I don't know.
I mean, I know some people that use 30, which I think is crazy, but
yeah, it is. I think,
but imagine the 30 is going to be a lot less drag than 80.
Yeah, but I would rather throw an extra ounce or whatever on that compensate for that extra drag. That's just me. The security of the 80-pound is what I would want over the little bit less drag. Like, I'll just put on extra weight on the keep it down or whatever.
So you're using 80-pound braid,
Mm-hmm.
and what's your leader?
80-pound as well. From the Dragon Master.
So 80-pound mono.
The black stuff, yeah.
In your hope. So usually that'll break before the braid.
And none of it wants to give.
I know that's what's scary sometimes, is when you're in that fast current and you get hung up, and that can be crazy. I usually have two things. I usually lose, well, 3 things, I guess. It'll be just the hook, just the weight, or the whole thing. It's like those are the breaking points. It's kind of weird. I don't ever seem to break off like above the barrel swivel, or the leader right below that connects to the braid. It's either you just lose the hook, you lose a weight, which the weights, the dropper is 30-pound or 40-pound or whatever it is. It's it's not as heavy duty. But yeah, it's funny, like, you can almost tell like what kind of snag you got. Like, one of those where it hits and it is solid. You're like, none of this is coming back. I'm going to lose every bit of it. So yeah, the snag and sticks, man, you got one on either side. You have to have those, because that stuff just don't want to break. I mean, you can almost hold the boat back with your components, which is a good thing. I mean, in theory, as long as you keep it all checked up on you, we're not gonna, there's no reason you should lose a fish, but like the problem that you do have if you don't have a snag stick or something to break that line quick is then that line will dig into your spool, and then it creates, it's just rough. I mean, the more snags you get into, and you got to be careful breaking your line, because then that creates later on that fish of a lifetime. You had an issue with your line, and then there it breaks right there.
Well, I like too is, you put like a snag stick for me, it don't ever cut or break at the reel or anything like that anymore. It always breaks way down there at the end. So losing the line is a huge issue. Like, I've, before wrapped it around something else and it cut the line at the reel. Well, if you had 200 feet, well, that rod's done. Like, you can't use that one anymore. You have to, you have to go to a different rod or a different setup now, because I don't want to chance it. Even if you had 250 feet left, I wouldn't fish with that, because normally I'm more than 250 behind the boat regardless. But just say, okay, well, I'll put a heavier weight on, I'll keep it close. Man, 100 and, you're fishing at 175 feet or 200 feet when you only have 250 feet of line. That 94, he pulled 100 feet of line off before I could engage the reel. When he hit, he pulled so hard that I was thumbing it, and then I had both thumbs on the spool, and he pulled 100 feet off before he decided to slow down. And then I could engage the reel and try to get, and then it all happened so fast, but then slow the trolling motor down so I could speed the boat up to get to him and get some of my line back. Well, if I'd have been at the end of my spool, he's gone. There was no stopping him. So I don't know. That's just me. Like, I want to have that safety net there of that fish like that. I mean, he hit so hard. It was crazy. I couldn't believe it was a fish, really. So yeah, I know that may only happen to you a time or two in your whole life, but man, if it's 80 boats and there's a bunch of money on the line and it happens,
Yeah. And like we always talk about I was did a radio interview today, and we were talking about big fish and how like the guy was asking, how are they hard to get in the boat? Like, how do you get one of those big fish in the boat? And everything has to go right. Like, there's so many times I hear this story, which is, I had a big bite and I lost it. It got away. I couldn't, like, if you get hit quick, I mean, there's some times in a tournament last year where we had the fish hit and go upriver, and things got crazy. We're in heavy current. We had to, get going upriver. It almost went underneath the boat and got stuck in the trolling motor. There's so many things can happen so quick, and having a partner that can help and know what's going on is really key. And that's why I always kind of go back to, your partner is a big piece of the puzzle when they know how to move the boat, or if you get a big fish, what to do, reel in quick and drive the trolling motor, or maybe start, like I had to start the big engine and go upriver because it was going up, and then underneath the boat, it was crazy. And then it actually got hung up, and then finally popped back out. I don't know if it lost the weight, but it popped out of the weight. So it was one of those. It was a miracle we caught the fish, but sometimes you don't catch that fish because you weren't prepared. You were on the phone, or you were taking a drink, or it's always something like that. You're doing something you don't think it matters. That's when the bite happens. And
then, especially in bumping, it'll lull you to sleep because you're just, it's repetition is, boom, boom, boom. And you get to talking or whatever it may be. And it kind of, you kind of forget that, hey, at any moment, especially when you're on these big rivers, again, it could be the new world record at literally any moment. So you kind of got to keep your head in the game, even though, if it's been an hour or two or three since your last bite, it kind of gets hard to stay like that, but you need to.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, Sean, everything changes in a split second. And you got to be ready for that bite. I mean, that's, especially if you're in a tournament setting, everything changes. So like I said, again, on that radio interview that I did this morning, we talked about big fish. There's a lot of big fish in that area. So the two questions I have is, number one, why do you think so many big fish get caught in that stretch of river? And do you think we'll see big fish at this tournament?
I think we're in a pretty good, we have a lot of hard bends, and I just kind of feel like that's a good thing. I don't know why. It seems like that heavy current, heavy current and big fish just seem to go together for me. There's a lot of rock around here, like big rock. Like they've submerged some really, really big rocks to kind of hold those big bends from chewing away. And like I said, I've marked some giant marks down there amongst that kind of stuff. Decent depth. So a lot of feeder creeks, I think, where They're finding a lot of stuff to eat. And honestly, there's not a lot of people that fish around here. Like, there's a lot of people that fish, but like what we're talking about, like these tournament guys that really get after it and consistently are on the water 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, sometimes a week, fish all winter, stuff like that. There's not a lot of that. So I think there too, there is some commercial fishing, and I wish we could figure out a way to do away with some of that. But even that, it's really kind of delegated into one little area that I know of. I don't really see them go too awful far from there. So I think that's a lot of it.
Like I said, I've weighed. I remember that championship I had in Cape Girardeau 2 years ago. Obviously the championship's small boat numbers. You're talking 22 boats, and we had 2 over 90 pounds.
Yeah,
that's, some people never see a 90-pound fish in their life. You know what I mean? And to see 2 in a tournament, like I said, we've seen a lot of big fish. I think number one is anglers are getting better. There's more anglers starting to really, just like yourself, you're really going out, putting the time in and understanding. You're not just kind of going out there and fishing for ghosts. You're starting to put patterns together and why, and really target special things. And I think that's why you're catching the fish you're catching. And like I said, I really hope you whack some people with using chicken, in July.
I don't want to get last in my home water. I will tell you that. I would be super upset if I have a pretty bad day. But that's just it. Sometimes I don't know that going in with less experience is a bad thing. Cause like me, I'm kind of setting I'm thinking, I'm going to hit this bank, this bank, this bank. I'm going to fish this area, because it's good. I know it's good. It's going to have fish. And then you go out there and you lay an egg because you didn't do your homework. You didn't read your graphs. You didn't do all the things that you should have done. Of course, I'll be out there pre-fishing and testing all these things too. But I don't know. Sometimes when you just kind of go in blind, or, Josh and I this year at the tournament trail, like, we've done better at the lakes. We have no lake experience. We haven't, which there hasn't been a lot of river stuff yet either, but, put us on a brand new lake. It seems like day one pre-fishing, we catch a fish. Day 2, we catch a few. The day before the tournament, we're like, okay, this might work. And then tournament day, it's like, well, that was a pretty good day. Milford, we did pretty good out there, and literally Friday evening coming in on the boat, we were just like, well, I guess tomorrow we'll just have fun, because we had no idea what to do. But we said, okay, this worked the best out of all the things, and then we picked that plan, we picked what we were going to do, and we stuck to it all day. We never left a area bigger than 2 football fields all day long. Never fished any deeper than 2 feet of water, and just one of those deals.
Do you think it was almost like some of those other events make you a better angler all around?
I think, yeah, because it makes you think outside of what you're, my brain goes to the, especially on a lake, I'm like, this should work. And it normally never does, because I don't know enough about it. So it makes you work. And then I think lake and river is different, but I think there's correlations between the two, and there's things that you can take from, one to the other, and it just makes you all around. The thinking aspect is what I think is the best part of it. Like, if something hasn't worked for 3 hours, if you start fishing at 7 and it's 10 o'clock and what you're doing, if you're doing the same thing over and over and it hasn't been working, you probably should, okay, let's put our thinking caps on here and figure out something else, because you're going to waste your whole day. And So I think having the openness and the mindset of what we can do different, and that's where fishing all the different types of things comes into play, because you just have to think all the time. So,
well, I think if you look at the points race, I mean, it's the people that they're when you go fish these other bodies of water for the first time, and you do, you know what I mean, it makes you think and kind of put things together for that next tournament that you got to go to an area you've never been to, but you started to fish these different bodies of water, and now you're starting to put a pattern together. The times of year, maybe the water is going to do this. I mean, like I said, this tournament coming up, let's say that somebody goes down there. I mean, I know there were some anglers down there last weekend. Mm-hmm. So that's a couple weeks out. Is that good? Is that bad? I mean, the water and everything is going to change. So maybe you can find some areas that you can key in on, but the water might be up 10 feet, might be down 10 feet. There might be a weather pattern. Everything is going to be different. Like, you can't go, if you have an awesome day in the middle of June, July 6th is not going to be that same day. Everything's going to change.
Correct. In the summertime, I have so rarely hit it 2 days in a row on the same stretch. It just never seems to work. That big fish, that 94, the day I caught him, I caught like a 40 something out of the same stretch. And then I think I caught 240 somethings. I had like the best bag I've ever had, could ever ask for, really. And then I've gone back to that so many, I've never got another bite there. And it should hold fish. I mean, there's structure, there's several trees in a row. You should, and it's never panned out. But I always try it thinking, well, maybe today's the day, but on tournament day, you can't really do that. You can't really go, well, maybe, you need to have a little bit more to go on than that. So.
Yeah, no, I like I said, so again, that question is, if whatever you do that weekend before or 3 days out, you got to be careful, because so many times I've had anglers come to me Friday night and show me pictures and say, we just killed them today. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, they're on a pattern, and I'm thinking, and then the next day, like, they come and they don't even have a fish, because by noon they're so devastated that they didn't have what they did 2 days ago or a day ago or 3 days ago, that now they're you know what I mean? They kept after that same pattern, and it didn't work. You know what I mean? So
and it wasn't a pattern anymore.
Correct.
Yeah. It just, I don't know. I've got some spots that I fished when the water was high this past time, and they were holding fish. So that's where I'll start. Those last few days before the tournament, I'll really key in on those spots. And if the fish are there, great. And if not, keep moving. But I've got a couple stretch of banks where I've caught fish when the river's high, like it's going to be. So, I mean, it just seems to be, like I said, the slower current side, and just a couple of stretches where I know there's a lot of unevenness on the bottom and a lot of stuff. And so that's what I'll be trying.
So tell me your week. So the area, so you don't really need to pre-fish a ton, but what is your plans that week, that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? Like, are you going to go out and put bait in the water? Are you going to go out and scan? Or are you just like, these areas that you're going to hit and that's it?
What I'm going to do is I will probably give a little bit of time to a couple of different areas, because I'm trying to maximize my day. So that will determine what ramp that I use. And then I'll have, my areas. I never really get very far from the ramp. That's one thing.
Because everybody wants to go really, really far.
I don't. I
Drop
stay.
over those kids.
Yeah, I stay always pretty close to the ramp. I guess, and especially with like in this immediate area, there's several ramps. Now you get very far north, and there's nothing basically all the way up to Crystal City. But so that's kind of what I'm going to do is I'm going to fish around a couple of different ramps and just kind of go with it, see what I like, and yeah, and then pick that ramp for tournament day, and then just hammer those areas around that ramp. And there's 2 or 3 banks around here that will win any tournament, on the right day. I have full confidence in that. So, it'll just be if they're there.
So let's go over these ramps. So, for those that are coming to the area, north ramp. So this obviously is in Perryville. So you live. Is your address Perryville?
It is.
So your address is Perryville.
Yeah.
So people always say, well, where is Perryville? Is that a lake? Because it's not on the Mississippi. It's about 15 minutes from the Mississippi.
Right.
Where you got to put it at Chester would be the closest ramp. So, but what's cool about Perryville is it's got that small town vibe, but it's still a pretty big town. But we're going to be weighing in downtown on the square. They got a car show. They're going to have food vendors. It's July 4th weekend. We'll have our fish hauler that we've had at a lot of our tournaments. Kind of explain to people like Perryville is going to be a pretty cool weigh-in. I
think so. We're going to be, it's in the city parking lot. The weigh-in is correct.
It's going to be downtown on the square. You're going to drive.
So, okay. Yeah. So, it's, your typical small town square and some places to go and see, and with the car show and everything, it'll be fun. There'll be a bunch of people. I've been kind of talking it up, hey, you might get to see something that you don't get to see very often. You're talking about, do I think big fish will be caught on tournament day? I just can't see it not happening with the amount of boat. I'd assume we're going to have a ton of boats because of where it's at. We're kind of in the heart of a lot of people that bump or a lot of people that fish in general, but it's a shorter drive for a lot of guys. I think it's going to be covered up in boats, and there's so much talent. Somebody's going to bring in something. We might see something really, really special. It's going to be fun. But no, the Perryville setting, it's going to be great. It's a touch off the river, but not far at all. But we're right next to 55. So if you're wanting to go south or go north to these other ramps, the access to the interstate is right there. You can be gone in a heartbeat.
So that's a good question. Eric says, what ramp with check-in Saturday AM? So and we'll go over that. So like I said, everything is going to be out of Perryville down on the square. I plan on being there either this Wednesday or Friday and doing some video stuff. But to go over that, so once we check your boat and registration, you can still register Friday night in Perryville. You can still register Saturday morning. So you can pull your boat through, we'll check your live well, make sure everything's good. And you can finish registering Saturday morning down on the square. And then once we check you at 5 a.m., we'll check the first boat. You're free to go. You can go up to the north ramp, which is Truman Access, which is on Harry S. Truman Park and River Access in Festus, Missouri. The furthest south ramp is Red Star and Cape Girardeau, and anything in between that allows public access. So, I lose track of all those ramps, but that's a lot of ramps still to use. We're working with one of the ramps I always forget the name that me and you put in that day for the
Wittenberg.
Wittenberg is private, but I think that hopefully they'll open it that couple days for us. So we'll still work on that. But you got Wittenberg.
I'll get his name.
Yeah, you got Chester, Trail of Tears.
Trail of Tears, yep.
So plenty of ramps to put in.
76 conservation area.
76 conservation. So some might be tougher to put in with high water, but again, if the water gets crazy high and we have to change a few things, maybe extend it a little bit, we'll just kind of see. 76 Chester, Apple Creek. Yeah, so there's gonna be a lot of ramps, and if you have questions, give me a call. Eric, I still got to call you. I for some reason didn't see your stuff. I think maybe that the PayPal went through, but it didn't go through the registration. So I'll get in touch with you after the show tonight. We'll kind of make sure all that's good. But again, Host Hotel is going to be the Holiday Inn. There's other hotels. The Holiday Inn is going to be our host. And all this stuff, again, whenever you're wanting to look at, all this different stuff for the tournament, the best way is the for sure best way is Facebook. And let's share that real quick. Okay, so I'm just going to show you when you're on, because I had several people today ask how to find stuff. So you're on the main Twisted Cat page. You pull it up, whether it's on your phone or your computer. And the first thing you're always going to see is these featured on the very top. You have upcoming events. So if you just go to see all events, it's got upcoming and past. So you can even go to past events. But if you go to upcoming events, you've got them all in order by date. So July 6th, Perryville, Missouri. August 3rd, Muscatine, Iowa. St. Joe, Burlington, New Madrid, Savannah, Tennessee, Keystone Lake. You just click that event, and then it's going to bring you up the event page in Facebook, and it's going to have the about. You just click discussion, and that's where we post all of our stuff. People around the town post. Here is a bunch of stuff. Shows the ramps, north ramp, the address, south ramp. Gives you a little bit of information. It's a holiday weekend. Make sure you book now. Don't wait till July 3rd to book. 100% payback plus $500 big fish from Castaway. And obviously always my number to call if you have questions. So this is really the best way to really follow that's kind of a picture of the square with the car show to kind of give you an idea of what this place is going to look like. It's going to be fun. So again, that's one way to really follow with all the stuff. Andy's got a nice profile pic on that flyer here. And again, a huge shout out to Perry County Tourism to have us there, Trish, if you're watching. But that really shows you kind of all your stuff about the event. And then you can always go to the website, and then in that, when you register, there's also that same information. So just kind of wanted to go over that. So Eric, hopefully I've answered most of your questions, but again, it's simple. Friday night will always be our non-mandatory. You don't have to be there, but most of the people, and Kirk, you can, not that you've got disqualified because you haven't. Most of the people that I have disqualified is because they didn't come Friday night, or they came Friday night and they didn't pay attention, because I always at one point would kind of go over all the small stuff. That's a 3 fish limit. There's no size limitations, ramps, times, all that stuff. I've had people come and weigh 3 fish in a 5 fish tournament, because they only thought it was 3 fish. So just make sure you come if you can make it, and just always pay attention to the rules. But, you can be in line at 4 or 3. And like I said, once 5 o'clock hits, that first boat is free to go. Then I'll check the second boat, free to go. And you just got to be between those two areas. Once you put in, let's say you put in Cape, I don't care if you boat to Memphis, but you've got a boat from Cape, from Red Star south, and then you just got to be back. So, again, Kirk, we always talk about this. If you put in Cape and you boat far south, you got to quit fishing at 3, but you don't want to be at the confluence of the Ohio and the Mississippi at 3 o'clock, because then you got to back to Cape, load your boat. Maybe there's other people loading their boats. Then you got to drive to Perryville. You have to be in the weigh-in line by 5 o'clock. So that's a 2-hour leeway. And again, that's plenty of time. You just have to make sure you're back. And again, like I said, it used to be 4:30. I've gave plenty of time, but it's not to give you more time to mess around. You got plenty of time to get back. You just want to make sure you're back in time. whether you got a flat tire, something crazy happens, there's always, not only do you got to go catch the fish and have a good day, you got to make it back to the weigh-in line.
I know. That's why I like to be so close to the ramp.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, I fished a tournament. I fished MRM out of Memphis last year, and the ramps with the low water were terrible. So, Greenville was opened up, and I knew some people in Greenville that said that the ramp was good. They added rocks. So my safest bet was to go there, and I knew that the ramp would be safe. So we went there, stayed there, put all of our eggs in that basket. And that was a 3-hour and 10-minute drive. So once we loaded the boat, like we had to quit fishing at 12:30, loaded the boat, fueled up, and got some chicken at this, I don't know, I can't remember what that gas station is down there, down south, and made the trek. I mean, 3 hours and 10 minutes just to drive from the boat ramp to there. But again, and then, we had to make sure that our live well was full, pulling way up that ramp, plugging everything, having an extra bucket of water, oxygen, and taking good care of those fish. And took our time. And like I said, made it back. But everything has to, what if you have flat tire? You have to be ready to change quick. So many things can happen. Traffic jam, tire, your battery's dead. I mean, you just never know. So
I know it's all those little things that you don't really think about, and it would just be, it'd be terrible to have 190 pounds in the live well and something like that get you.
And it's happened plenty of times before to people. So I mean, you just got to prepare for that. And, Eric said he'll be there Friday night for meeting, coming down Thursday, booked at the host hotel. See you all then. So yeah, Eric, we're excited to see you. Like I said, it's going to be fun. Jerry, you're going to have a blast. It's going to be a good event. I'm pretty pumped about it. Hopefully we see some big fish. I'm working on, I know the fresh skipjack has been crazy. So we might have somebody we'll see on fresh bait for Friday. I'll work on that, and we'll see how that goes. But again, Host Hotel is the Holiday Inn. I'll be there this week, kind of going over a few things. The ramps, like I said, are anywhere between Truman Access and Red Star, and any public ramp that you can use between there. And I think Kirk and Charlie and those guys will help us get into Wittenberg, which is got a nice ramp. And unless water changes a lot, I know a lot of people north are having some major flooding. I mean, I know I've seen that there's a dam that may bust on the Minnesota River, and I think the Sioux Falls Bridge collapsed this morning. I mean, the flooding is pretty crazy. So as you can tell on the gauge, I think we'll get some of that, but I don't know. Hopefully it doesn't affect the event.
Yeah, I mean, if it's going to be that slow rise and top out at 28, that might be all the makings for a pretty good show.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm hoping for. So,
yeah.
And like I said, you've already been on the water with 31 feet in May, so it's already been up to 31 in May. And what about the bridge? What's the story on the bridge? Are they working on is the bridge traffic normal? Yeah, Chester.
Yeah. The traffic's normal on the old one or whatever. I wouldn't think that would cause any issues of, like, if you're going to put in at the Chester ramp, getting across there, especially at that time of the morning. I don't see there being any problems with that. And then on the water, I mean, they're still in the building of the column portion, so they've got a bunch of barges and stuff, anchored up all through there. But obviously they have to keep it open enough for barge traffic. So I don't think none of that will really be any issue.
Good. Okay. Anything else you got left to say? Anybody you want to thank or give a shout out to, or tell them to bring their A game when they come see you? Or to bring their A game when they come? July 6th.
That's right. Man, it's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to it. Like, it's kind of the summer kickoff tournament, and getting on the bigger water and everything like that. So Yeah, I think it's going to be good. I think everything will, it's going to be a pretty good show.
It's crazy that we've already, like, we're halfway through the year now after this tournament. And like now it's getting to the river section a little bit. You've got Perryville. Then we go up to Muscatine, which is a bunch of big flatheads and channels. I think 72 pounds on that. And then from Perryville, then you go to the Missouri to St. Joe.
I mean, if I'm being honest, I cannot wait for that tournament. I remember when you were asking for suggestions on where to go, I said Missouri north of St. Joe. I've never fished up there. I've got a couple guys that I'm friends with on Facebook that fish up there and just hammer some big fish. But I drive through there a lot for whether it be work or when we go turkey hunting in South Dakota, we drive up through there, and I'm always looking at that area, and it looks so good. It's a lot more compact, and I'm like, So I'm really, really looking forward to that one. I mean, of course, this one here in Perryville is going to be a blast, and it should be just a giant showing, I would think.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's kind of in the center of where a lot of these guys are from, and it's going to be a blast. But I'm really, really looking forward to that Missouri River one too. So
yeah, it'll be good. Well, hey man, I appreciate you being on.
Absolutely.
Sometime this summer we got to get out once the bite starts to really heavy again. We'll get out and do some fishing live and stuff, and hopefully better than we did last time.
It was the eclipse. It screwed us.
The eclipse. It was a bad.
It turned the bite off.
But that was one of the coolest things I've ever seen, I think, being in the middle of that.
That was so much fun. Like when the bugs started going nuts, like it was nighttime. That was pretty crazy experience.
Yeah.
But
well, man, thank you for being on and hanging out. And like I said, we'll see you here in a couple weeks.
Yep.
And if you're watching, thank you for watching. Share with your friends. Tell them to be in Perryville, Missouri, July 6th. It's going to be a big, big event. We're really pumped about it. Again, thanks to all the sponsors. Next Monday, I'm trying to have Pate with Pro Guide Batteries on to talk about lithium, AGM, all things batteries. I know everybody's always got questions about lithiums. Are they dangerous? Are they safe? I've been running them personally for 3 years and love them. They're light and they last forever. So hopefully if you got questions about that next Monday, that's who we're going to look to have on. I should try to confirm that by hopefully Wednesday. But again, you have any questions, call me, send me a message. I hope to see you July 6th in Perryville, Missouri, and have a great rest of your week.
If anybody needs anything local, like if they're having, trolling motor issues or hey, how about this ramp with the water, they can reach out to me personally as well. And I'll try to help them out in any way I can.
Kirk's pretty local to that area. So if there's something that you need, if you can't find or get a hold of him, you need to let me know, and I'll make you sure you can get in contact with him. So even
tools or something, if something would, whatever I can do to help anybody that's going to be in the area or whatever, just have them reach out and go from there.
Doug needs a chicken connection.
It's right there in Perryville, Rogers, right off the square.
Speaking of Doug, him and his dad have put on some big fish in that area too. So I think Doug's personal bestest came just close to Chester. So Doug, we'll hopefully see you July 6th. Do you guys have a KFC in town?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, everybody, thanks for watching. Kirk, thanks for being on. And
yes, sir.
Again, have a great week, and we'll see y'all next Monday.
Yeah.